Welcome to the Living Superhuman Fitness Podcast, where we take you inside our gym, CrossFit Palm Beach, each week. It's here that we are creating new superhumans every day, transforming people's lives, helping them reach a level of health they never knew possible. We strive to answer your most burning questions on fitness, health, nutrition, training, motivation, mindset, lifestyle, and more. If you have a question, please email us at info@crossfitpalmbeach.com. You can also learn more on our blog, livingsuperhuman.com. And if you have a moment, we'd love a review from you on iTunes. All right, it's time. Let's stop being average and start living superhuman. All right, guys, welcome to the Living Superhuman Fitness Podcast. My name is Andrew Frezza. We're joined today by Tony Frezza and one of our first guests on the show, Dr. Jordan Zabriskie, and we'll just keep it at Dr. Z for today. So Dr. Z is local chiropractor and does all kinds of different things. I'm going to let him kind of take the floor and tell him a little bit about himself and his practice. So welcome, Dr. Z. Tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do with your practice.
That was an amazing pronunciation of my name. So my office is Elite Therapy and Wellness. We are a multidisciplinary facility, so we have chiropractic, physical therapy, massage, spinal decompression. So the demographic that we treat is primarily active people. So individuals that are either marathon runners, CrossFitters, Globo Gym, which is, Golds, etc., powerlifters, golfers, any of the above, who have shoulder issues, knee, ankle, back, of course, neck. Sometimes they're long-standing issues, sometimes they're acute, and our goal is just to resolve it as quickly as possible. So a big thing that we do there is active release. And I can talk about that a little bit later as far as like how to correct things. But we're always hands-on. We do corrective exercises. We do adjustments, of course. And each person is a little different. We don't have a cookie cutter approach really, but really cool office. We're located off Military in Frederick Small in Jupiter, Florida.
Cool.
Yeah.
So today's episode, we're going to be talking about how to bulletproof the shoulders to be able to keep doing CrossFit and get stronger, improve performance, prevent injuries. Why did we pick the shoulders? What is it that you're seeing in your practice, and why do we choose to target the shoulders today?
Yeah, great question. The reason why I wanted to talk about shoulders, and as I was telling Tony when we were talking earlier today, shoulders really affects any sport, right? CrossFit, I see it happen more, not because it's CrossFit's fault necessarily. It's more that's just human error. Like we have a tendency to not do enough to help ourselves, and then by the time we have an injury or we have the pain, we're behind. And so really, if I could just condense it, it's because of muscular imbalance. And the shoulder is an amazing joint. You have maximum range of motion. The only thing that has something equal is your hip, but the hip is way different because it's a lot more stable because it holds more weight. And the shoulder joint itself is called a glenoid fossa, right? So it's called a glenohumeral junction. Your humerus is your arm bone, right? And then it has the head and it fits into this glenoid fossa. It's very shallow. So you're doing a lot of movements with a very shallow joint, so the propensity for you to injure it is very high. So the risk is great no matter what you do. Even if you're a superior athlete, even if you have great coaching, the chances are really high. So the reason why I wanted to talk about shoulders is because if people do more things proactively, your risk of error is less. It's not gone, but it's less. So
cool. Yeah, I like how you brought up that it's by the time there's pain, there's already been there's been this all downstream effect of things that have happened before it. And what are some of the things that you're finding are leading to it? So maybe someone doesn't have a shoulder issue yet, maybe they felt some things that are a little off, but what are you seeing that's like the kind of precursors to the shoulder injury?
Right, so I could literally talk about that for a long time because I see so many people in my office that have neck, shoulder, and they don't exercise, right? And the reason is because of how our society is now. We have less physical jobs, a lot more computer-based sitting. So if I'm in a seated position,
straighten up for you.
every time I talk about this, patient's like, oh, I have great posture. But really, so if I'm at my computer, right, and I'm reaching towards, and I never had ergonomics, right, and then what else do we do all day? I'm going to ask you text, right?
Text, yeah.
Or Facebook, or Pinterest,
or
maybe. Drive, right?
Yeah.
And so I'm like this. So this is my body position, right? So everything is shortening. So there's something called upper cross syndrome, which I won't make it too complex, but basically your pecs get tight, right? Your levator, your trap, all these muscles start to pull you forward, and you get an anterior translation of these segments. And then also, moreover, your shoulder will start to internally rotate. And then, as I was talking to Tony, because he was complaining about his bicep, because we all have shoulder issues at some point, it will then cause more stress on your pec and or biceps tendon, right? So, and then people sleep on their shoulders, right? So you have this coupling effect. So this takes months, sometimes years of time, but then they'll have all these issues. Then you put in dynamic exercise. So what I always say is what people are doing is they're putting fitness on top of dysfunction. Mm-hmm. So you're trying to accomplish something when you already have dysfunctional movement. It's a recipe for an injury. So if we can fix that before, which is what I attempt to do at my office, but most people I see,
it's after.
Yeah, it's human nature. I mean, it's just, why would I go there when I don't hurt, right? Mm-hmm. So that's the best way I can answer that. It's just, you see it in society as a whole, and that's the reason why I'm able to correct a lot of headache issues and neck issues too, because it's a similar process.
So it sounds like at your practice, you're attacking more of the root cause rather than just the symptom.
100%.
How is it that you attack that? Like, what are some of the, how do you, like, as relates to a shoulder and maybe even some specific CrossFitters without naming names, like, how do you attack that issue? You know, how do you apply those techniques?
So what I do is, let's just say, I'll give you a common injury, right? Shoulder impingement, which isn't technically an injury. Just someone comes in and they complain about anterior shoulder pain, or pain when they do a push-up, or pain when they do a push press, or a jerk, or pain when they do pull-ups. It's pretty much the same thing. What happens is your biceps tendon, there's two heads. Your long head comes around and it attaches to the back of your scapula, and the other one comes and attaches more medially. Mm-hmm. And so again, going back to that anterior form where people have this internal rotation of their humerus and then they're doing all these exercises, this will all be tight. So let's just call him Bob, for instance. Bob comes in with this shoulder issue. So I'd explain to him about postural issues. I talked to him about his work and how he needs to change his ergonomics. But then in the gym, what you need to do is you need to start lengthening this. So you do some mobilization. You use a lacrosse ball in your pec. You start to do some basic stretches, right? You get your subscap to release. Excuse me. And then of course you need to strengthen your posterior chain, right? Because so much of exercise are push based. And so you need to strengthen the posterior aspect of your shoulder capsule to create more of a balance. So that is generally how most shoulder issues are corrected that way. You lengthen the shortened tissue and you strengthen the weakened tissue, and then you get the inflammation to reduce, either with ultrasound. Now, A.R.T, active release, is a technique that I do, and essentially it's a myofascial where you get the muscle tissue to release, and then I get more space within your joint capsule and allows it to move freely, also to get your shoulder in a better position so that it can heal, A, and then B, when you try to go accomplish whatever it is again, there's not an impingement, there's no issue. Mm-hmm. So it's hard to answer that question because each person's a little different.
Right.
But the quickest answer is that assess what's the cause is and try to remove that, right? Correct your deficiencies, and then and then strengthen your weaknesses, all those types of things. That's the quickest way to explain that.
Okay.
When someone is in your office, do you have a protocol? I know you have the flexibility, the mobility stuff.
Sure.
Do you have a protocol to strengthen them in your office, or you kind of?
I have basic protocols for most shoulders, because there is a universal deficit on most shoulder people. Now, if you have a rotator cuff that's blown out, if you have a labral issue, those are different things. But most people that have just shoulder pain and weakness, I have some protocols set up, and this is your baseline. Mm-hmm. And then if Bob's trying to accomplish a particular task, I can't do pull-ups, I can't do push-ups, I can't do a certain press. Well, let's find out why. Like, why can't you do that? And then let's attack that particular. But for people that just have shoulder issues out there, if you're trying to correct things on your own, if you stretch your pecs, if you stretch your lats, if you stretch your triceps, right, you're gonna fix a lot of things. If you foam roll your lats, if you use a lacrosse ball in your chest, if you correct your posture when you're at your desk, if you take intermittent breaks, take every hour or so. Mm-hmm. So a big part of my office is education. You have to educate your patients on why the problem is. Because if I'm just fixing your symptoms and then you go back out and you do what you're doing already, of course you're gonna be back in my office, and that sounds like a poor business model. My patients are always like, why are you showing us how to fix us? And I'm like, well, it's my job, right?
There's always gonna be plenty.
Right, so shoulders are complex because, again, there's so much movement to them. But if you strengthen your shoulder with external, internal rotation, if you don't sleep on your affected shoulder, right? If you mobilize, if you reduce some of the tension in the front of your chest, which attaches to your shoulder, then you're gonna fix a lot of really basic issues. Now, if it's more complex and you have specific weakness, then that's something we have to assess,
What's the best way to sleep for your shoulder safety and health?
Yeah, great question. It's for most wives, they hate this answer because most husbands snore, right? But the answer is on your back with pillows under your knees, okay?
What does that do, under the knees?
Great question. So for my lumbar back patients, putting pillows under your knees, it flattens out your back and it takes the stress out of your lumbar paraspinals. I'd say 99% of people are comfortable with that. There are a few people that just can't because they've never done that, or they're stomach sleepers. Mm-hmm. Don't ever sleep on your stomach, ever. Mm-hmm. Even if there's a fire, don't do it. But it's, if you sleep on your back, and then whatever your affected arm is, right? I've separated both my shoulders. One was from football, another was because I was being a meathead. And so like I've sometimes, at one point I had like 2 pillows and I was sleeping like this. But you put a pillow so you avoid rolling onto that side.
Gotcha.
It is crucial though. Like if there's 164 hours in a week and I see you for 2 or 3 of those 164, what you do the remainder of those hours is crucial, and obviously 35 to 50 of that is sleeping.
Yeah.
So it's a big part of it,
With the ART, is there? Do you recommend for people to do that on their own to a degree? Is there? Obviously, it's not as good, but is there a way to do that? Is there things that can be explained over video or audio that you could help someone to do that?
So the lacrosse ball. So what you're asking is basically home myofascial. Mm-hmm. So it's difficult to do active release on yourself, and I'm not trying to say that for a plug for myself. But there is a specific art to it, no pun intended. It is because there's a certain amount of tension, there's a certain range of motion that you're trying to achieve, right? Because that's what it's doing. I'm increasing range of motion. A really good example is I had a woman who had frozen shoulder for, 3 years. She couldn't, her complaint was not pain, she couldn't undo her bra. Right? This is a 60-year-old woman. She couldn't do that. She's active though, very active, still does stuff. And her doctor, who I'm friends with and have treated, she's like, just go see Z, see if he can help. And she was very skeptical at best. It's the best way. I say, give me 4 treatments. Let me see if I can make a change, right? And so really all we did was break up her fascial restrictions and her capsular restrictions. And after 3 weeks, 6 treatments, she was able to put her arm behind her back. She thought it was some kind of magic trick. I said, no, it's just what you're doing is you're freeing up the shoulder capsule. You're giving yourself, now, is that universal? Does that always work? No, because there's each person's a little different. But to answer your question, using a lacrosse ball, using a foam roller correctly, which is something that we educate our patients, or we can show everybody how to do that, is the best way. But you need to be consistent. You need to do it after an exercise, specifically if it's a lot of upper extremity stuff. That'll help you mitigate those fascial restrictions, fascial adhesions. Fascia, just real quick, if people aren't familiar, is a connective tissue that surrounds your muscles, tendons, and ligaments. And it's a necessary means. The analogy I give is fascia is like a net. Your muscles, tendons, ligaments, bones, etc. are like fish. So I have a certain number of fish. Now those fish can grow in size, muscle hypertrophy, and that net is just supposed to keep everything together. Now if I use something repetitively, a really common thing I see is IT band problems. Someone's a cyclist, they're rowing, and every day they use that net tears. If they don't foam roll, if they don't stretch, if they sleep with their knee up like this, then that net shrinks. So now I have the same amount of fish in a smaller net. And I had a really analytical patient. They're like, well, what if the fish swim out? I'm like, just relax. It's a
good net.
Nothing can get out of the net, okay? Not phytoplankton, nothing, okay? Just water. And so the idea is that now you're compressing all of those things. So if you get that to decompress, it's not a perfect analogy, but if you get it decompressed, now everything moves a little bit better. So home myofascial release is a way, but if it gets to a certain extent, then it's beyond it, because now you're into deep fascia, and it's really, you won't inflict enough change. You won't cause enough tissue change to get better.
Okay.
Yeah.
Want to ask, like, what are your favorite movements on the more preventative side? So maybe it's someone who just sits a lot, they kind of know they have bad posture. Maybe they've had a day where like the shoulder feels off, but in general there's not much pain there.
Sure.
And there's like, man, I come in 5 minutes early before class, or I have 5 minutes after class. What's something that they can do? What are your favorite kind of go-to exercises as just a catch-all?
Side lying, external rotation. So I guess that's hard to explain.
So kind of like a side plank, but just laying on the ground.
Yeah, so I'll just stand up and show you. So pretend I'm on my side, right? And you put a towel underneath your arm, and there's 3 positions. So I'm gonna have my head's on a pillow, and there's 3 positions. I'm gonna do 10 external rotations like this, turn my hand 10 that way, and then 10 this way.
Okay.
So it looks...
What kind of weight do you have, or do you have any weight?
None really.
Okay.
You could do it with like, at most like a pound.
Okay. 2
pounds maybe. It seems like a really basic movement, but most people are really weak. You know, I've had like 270-pound bodybuilders, and I have them doing that, and they're like, their arms like shaking.
What is that doing? What is that?
What you're doing is you're activating the posterior muscles of your arm. So your infraspinatus, your teres minor, all those muscles, which are small muscles. It makes up part of your rotator cuff. But what you're doing is you're activating your posterior chain parts of it, and it creates more stability. Another thing that they can do is pec stretch, right? Just a standing doorway stretch. They do that at the end of the day or throughout the day. Wall slides are door slides, I call them. So basically your head, you're against, and maybe we can record the exercises another time, but essentially you're against a wall.
Back's against the wall.
Back's against the wall, right?
Standing.
And you're pulling your chin in, and then you're sliding your arms up and down while pushing into the wall. And so what you're doing is you're working on your anterior neck flexors, right? And because this is generally weak in someone who has upper cross syndrome. And so, because they'll have this forward head posture. So the stronger these muscles are, the better neck position I'll have.
And you're taking that through a range of motion similar to like a dumbbell strict press, kind of that same motion?
You're going to what you're capable.
Okay.
So some people, if they have poor scapular mobility, some people are so tight, if they try to put their arms against the wall, they're going to look like this.
The wrist won't, the forearm should be flat against the wall.
It should be flat. It won't. So in that case, what I tell them to do is an isometric contraction. So just have your arms against the wall. This is most men over 45,
okay,
right? So just to have that chin tuck, pull your shoulders and everything against the wall, hold for 3 seconds, relax, do that 20 times. In the same sense, this is 20 reps. So I'll tuck my chin. As I slide up, I hold my chin, and then as I come back down, I release and then re-engage. So you're doing that 20 times, every day. And again, using a lacrosse ball in your pec would be helpful.
Okay.
I like what you showed me previously, because that's what I need is the lacrosse ball in the pec. But typically I would just go up to a wall and try to get as close as I could, get as much pressure as I could. But then you had me do it on a pole,
right,
or you could do it on the rig, and then you can really put the arm outstretched in front of you,
right, or a doorway,
and out to the side.
If you use the frame of a door, you put a lacrosse ball, and then you can. It's about getting as much range of motion as you can, right?
And that's kind of like a manual form of the A.R.T, but not as dialed in, right?
It's home myofascial is what it is, and we give everybody that. Everybody, when you come, I'll give you some form. It depends. If you're 96 years old, I'm not going to ask you to go foam roll. Although we have some pretty athletic, elderly patients. So really, it's to your capability. We try to modify it, but yeah, home myofascial stretching every day. Some type of isometric door slide, and then those side-lying ER exercises is really, you're taking care of a lot of things, and it's really simple.
Awesome. We'll wrap things up, so I know you're limited on time, but just in terms of like sequencing or when you put this in your day, do you like these things before a workout, after a workout, or just outside completely? Does it matter that much?
Well, okay, so if you're a pretty active person, the stretching is something that you can do throughout the day, right? As far as the myofascial release is concerned, you're gonna do that after your workout.
Okay.
Right? Or after your work day.
And that's, just to clarify, that's lacrosse ball, foam roll type work.
Lacrosse ball, foam roll, some mashing. You're trying to get that fascia to stay lengthened and not shorten up.
Okay.
Yeah.
Say an injury, or you're doing overhead squats and you feel something tweak.
Yeah.
Is it okay to go right to the lacrosse ball, or was that causing too much trauma around the area? Or
No. So
do you ice at all?
That's a good question. So what I would do is I'd ice, and then I'd talk to a provider like myself. Have them check it out. Now, if it completely dissipates and you have none, then you're usually fine. Maybe you just had like a tweak, but it's better that they assess it and see to what extent you have, and then they can guide you a little bit better.
Cool. I think this will be a last question. What warning signs, if people maybe don't quite have pain, or maybe it's just like a 1 or 2 pain on a scale of 1 to 10, that it's like, it's not really worth it for me to see someone yet, or maybe they're thinking that. Sure. What are warning signs that they could be looking for in any form to either definitely start doing these shoulder exercises, or to come see you? And
well, just and I don't mean this, it's kind of a joke, but not really. If you don't have shoulder issues, eventually you will. So you might as well just do it, honestly.
Yeah.
But I would say if you wake up and you have stiffness, lack of mobility, unless you are warm, like a lot of people will say that, like I'm fine once I get going.
Yeah,
right?
That's common, very common for that.
And what that means is you're over 30. So now, because it's just, you get restriction. So you're never gonna really, not never, you can obviously overstretch and you can over mobilize, but rarely, if you do it conservatively, right, are you gonna injure yourself by starting to do this. So it would behoove everyone who's active to start to stretch before you have pain. But if you start to get anterior pain in your shoulder, right, or if you have pain in your shoulder when you first start to work out, but then it goes away, then that's time to see somebody, right? Because what that means, your body is giving you a hint. It's like, listen, something's not moving right, or we need to be really, really warm before it doesn't hurt when I try to achieve a basic movement. And that means that you have some kind of restriction. So that's the best way I can answer that.
Cool. I think we'll wrap it up, let you get going. We'll get all the exercise videos so you guys can see things visually as well.
Yeah.
Anything else you wanted to add?
Ice is your friend, you know. Don't ice longer than 20 minutes at a time. Give yourself 45 in between, meaning like don't ice. Some people say 20 on, 20 off. I personally don't agree, because you don't want to, the tissue needs to get some blood flow back there again. So if you injure yourself before you go see someone, icing almost universally is going to help mitigate some of that. And learn how to sleep on your back. It'll help you.
Cool. I'm going to take that advice. All right, guys. Thanks for joining us.
All right.
Thanks, Jordan.
Yeah, buddy.
Cool, man.
Nice to see you.